You are listening to a podcast series, Asking Soulful Questions, by Sacred Art of Living. To learn more, visit sacredartofliving.org. Today's podcast is a part of a series called The Question of Belief.
Welcome back to episode 2 of What is Belief in our family discussion. Now we're going to continue on with that discussion. Hope you all enjoy it. And I've done a lot of work in hospice, and you're so right on with that. I mean, there's so much just watching people go through that struggle when they've had an issue with a religion, and it's painful to watch.
Yeah, I think it's something I've learned is I used to be jealous of people who were religious. Growing up as a kid, I was angry at religion, but I was also jealous of my friends. I had friends who were evangelicals and Mormons and, non-denominational Christian, things like that. And it seemed like they thought they had it all figured out. And that idea of having it all figured out and like knowing what happens to you when you die and knowing like the rules that the world works by seemed so nice, so nice just to have that certainty. And then doing this job, I see the ways that people have been wounded by religion, and that there is uncertainty still for people who have a belief system, not sure that they're living up to it. And I guess realizing that religious people are not that different from me in their uncertainty,
Yeah. This whole segment is about answers versus questions. And Madeleine, you said something that really resonated with me about that whole thing of, and Sarah, I think you're saying the same thing of somebody knowing. When I was younger, that really put me off. Somebody that was just like so certain that my path is the right path. I'm going, well, geez, there's 10 other people that have a totally different view and they're totally certain. So like, how am I supposed to believe that? I really found that the questions were more important to me. And Madeleine, you said something like that, like, just not, the answers weren't maybe there, but the questions are important.
Yeah. Religion has been just interesting throughout my life, and I've wanted to learn more about it. My dad has had like little, because he's always been close to grandpa and everything, and has had like really cool religious books where they kind of skim the surface of different religions. And so I've always been pretty interested in just what are other people thinking and how are they thinking it and why are they thinking it and how is that affecting their life. And I think that that's a good place to start, at least.
I love that, because I think curiosity is part of the path of healthy spirituality. And, we've called this series Soul-Size Questions, not Soul-Size Answers.
Yeah.
Because I think what we're sometimes getting at here in different ways is that a narrow, let's say, religious path. And I'm not saying all religion is bad. For some people, they find it a path into their spiritual self. But I think the worst side of religion is when it tries to wrap up mystery with neat answers. And I think deep down, if you're really growing and evolving as a human being, at some place and some level, you go tilt. Say, wait a minute.
Mm-hmm.
I'm being told on one hand that this is the unknowable mystery of the universe we're talking about. And then you're telling me in this book, there's this black and white little answer, and this small percentage of the population is saved and everybody else is not.
Sarah, you said something that stuck with me about, I thought of it more as behavior. Like you said, it really isn't it more about people being good to each other and something along those lines? Because I've always thought that that's another tricky spot, is if your belief system really isn't making you a better person, how much value does it have? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think religion's used in a lot of ways for good and for bad. And, the Bible and other religious texts can be interpreted in different ways. And I feel like people use it the way they are. You can pick out the parts that says, hate this, hate that, disallow this, disallow that, or you can pick out the parts that say, love your neighbor, do no harm, those things. You can pick those parts out, and it's really about your actions. You can use it to justify just about anything, honestly. And it's up to you what you really do and the choices you make and the behaviors you have. As a kid, in the church, I saw people doing things that weren't good and treating others badly and making poor choices. And I remember thinking, I don't even believe any of this crap that they're talking about, but I live the way they say you're supposed to live more than they do. So who's wrong here? Who's making the wrong decision?
I'm sure what I think about a lot during all this conversation around just treating people right and just living your life a certain way is I go back to my dad. And, obviously he was raised Catholic as well, but like, I feel like so much of my, treating other people like kindly and being gentle, honestly, I feel like it came from him.
Mm.
And, the other part that I think about is I remember when, my grandmother's dad, my great grandpa Hummel, when he passed, they found in his billfold a little code to live by, and it, during his memorial service that they had passed around, and I even had kept that in my wallet for years to come. And it was one of those things. I mean, some of the biggest points to that I took away from it, though, was just the treatment of others. Other people with kindness. And I do find, I think growing up and then looking back, and I guess I'm just going to be blunt about this, but like, it's really thinking about the Catholic Church and some of the things that have come out about the Catholic Church with some of the things with, sex abuse with priests and stuff like that. It is really hard to see people who claim to be following this code or this, how God wanted us to be treating other people. And you have these people that are supposed to be leaders within this religious community that are not doing that. And I don't consider myself Catholic anymore, but that is still really hard to see when you have leaders in these communities doing that. And I think growing up and seeing a little bit of that come to the surface, like it felt embarrassing, and it felt like this is how I live my life. This isn't how I want to live my life.
I think the Catholic Church and all that you're describing is an interesting microcosm in and of itself, but I also think that it's a large part based on the power that we put into other people. I think with power comes a lot of corruption, and you see that in government, you see that in any place of power, you see that in schools. People who are even getting the slightest bit of power, they'll abuse it. And I don't know what that is in people.
We had a gathering, family gathering, a reunion this Christmas time, and I had relatives, nieces, nephews from all over the country that were together, and we were having fun, and they've all got kids now. And this one evening, this just happened, this kind of conversation. And my niece, who's a high school teacher, said, she says, if I was doing a podcast, you know what I would call it? I said, no, tell me. And she says, if you're trying to reach my generation, and she was raised in a Christian tradition, she says, I would say something like, Jesus is okay, but the church has really let me down. And I just remember, even just saying that, I just get, a goose flesh, because there's that difference between belief and control, which I think is on the answer side of the problem, and the question side, which I think is, some have said that the soul never speaks except in questions. Now, that's an interesting kind of thought, that if the soul is always kind of generating questions, I have no way of proving that. But for some reason, that belief touches me more clearly than all the years I spent studying theology, where the job was to learn the answers.
Hmm.
I really like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
What a great discussion. I think that's a great place to end this episode. And we look forward to taking up more of this discussion in our next episode.
We would like to thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Question of Belief. For more information about our entire podcast library, Asking Soulful Questions, visit our website at sacredartofliving.org.